Hello, class. It's Haley. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. I chose to talk about the topic of self-esteem in socially marginalized groups from chapter 3. Um, the reason I chose this topic was because I believe that self-esteem drives our ability to do everyday tasks with joy and to help us feed our dreams. And I think that these are two of the most important reasons that help us get up every day and want to do life. And so I think that analyzing this topic is extremely important. The main question that I'm going to be answering today is how those in socially marginalized groups foster their self-esteem. The textbook states three main tactics that they use, and I will begin to analyze those. But first, it's extremely important that we understand the definitions of both self-esteem and socially marginalized groups. The textbook states that self-esteem is one's subjective evaluation of one's value and worth as a person. But I think that this can also be defined as confidence and respect of one's own worth and capabilities. When talking about socially marginalized groups, the textbook doesn't actually give a definition. So I found a definition from the Young African Leaders Initiative, in which they state that socially marginalized groups are defined as people who are denied the involvement in mainstream economic, political, cultural, and social activities. These can be people anywhere from those with mental or physical disabilities, those in a lower economic class, those who are ill, ethnic minorities, immigrants, and unfortunately, there are many, many more socially marginalized groups that we could name, but these are just a few. Now that we understand self-esteem and socially marginalized groups, we can properly look at the tactics that they use to foster their self-confidence. The first tactic that the textbook states is that they value things they excel at. Oftentimes, those classified in socially marginalized groups demonstrate a gifting in one area but lack basic and natural skills in another area that we would find typically easy or a part of our everyday routine. A real world example of this would be somebody by the name of Cody Lee. I'm sure you have heard of him before, but he is a 23-year-old autistic musician who also suffers from Addison's disease. In 2019, he auditioned for America's Got Talent and received a golden buzzer. And this can help us understand how they value things they excel at, because Cody Lee, he chose to focus on what he was really good at, and he chose to foster his self-esteem based on that rather than on the things that he couldn't do and the things that he couldn't understand. The second tactic that the textbook states for us is they attribute their problems to prejudices in society rather than to their own behaviors or decisions. In order to maintain self-confidence, those in socially marginalized groups tend to blame issues they face on the faults of the government or ignorance of other people. A hypothetical example of this would be that someone who is homeless and who has not been actively seeking a job or means of living, they often tend to blame their situation on the government's lack of job generation. And this can be a negative example of this tactic, but it really helps to show how oftentimes they will place their problems on other people. The third tactic that the textbook states is that they compare themselves with others in their own group more than with people from other groups. And this just helps to ensure that they receive an accurate representation of their skills and of their behaviors. Altogether, today we were able to answer the question of how do those in socially marginalized groups foster their self-esteem. We looked at the textbook as well as outside definitions of self-esteem and socially marginalized groups. We talked about the three main tactics that they use to foster their self-esteem. Number one being that they value things they excel at. Number two, they attribute their problems and prejudices in society rather than to their own behaviors or decisions. And number three, that they compare themselves with others in their own group more more than with people from other groups. I hope that this could help you understand more, not only self-esteem in socially marginalized groups, but also how you can foster in your everyday self-esteem.